yesterday made the announcement concerning Kia's future investments, and as I yesterday apologized to you, I was not in a position to talk in great detail about it because we were awaiting the governor's press release, which just came out this morning, and so I kind of had to dodge around some of the salient facts to it. And this morning I'd just like to kind of give you all I know about it and be happy to answer any of your questions, and if I can't answer your questions, I'll be happy to get back to you. Before we get to this transaction, let's go back to the first transaction because it's important that we draw the distinction between what happened a few years ago and what happened yesterday. The original transaction by which Kia came to Georgia had the following key points to it. The state of Georgia took responsibility for the acquisition of the property. I think it's approximately 2,200 acres. The state of Georgia took responsibility for the building of the new interchange on the interstate. Georgia took responsibility for the building of the training center, which is certainly a world-class facility, and made a commitment to use Georgia Quick Start, which is a wonderful way in which Kia has, and other people as well, have utilized employment training through that organization. Kia made that was the state's commitment. Kia's commitment was a $1.1 billion investment, and it had inducements with it. And the inducements that were given was that the city of West Point forego taxes for a 16-year period, Troup County forego taxes for a 16-year period, and the school system foregoed 50% of their taxes for the first 6 years, and then 25% of their taxes for years 7 through 16 of that arrangement. So that's kind of the summary of the first transaction. Kia said we're going to build a plant, we're going to employ people, we're going to add inventory, and all that happened almost exactly the way it was laid out, which I think in itself is unusual. As we find ourselves today in 2012, Kia is reaching the $1.1 billion mark of investment as we speak. In other words, in 6 years as opposed to 16, they are already at the number they committed to in the beginning. And I find that to be remarkable because they have done that in the toughest economic period we've had since the Great Depression. You know Kia's numbers. Kia has set sales records month over month, profit, market share gain, all the numbers by which they are judged financially. It's just been an absolute extraordinary run for them. Back in February of this year, we were asked to participate with Kia talking about its future. And the we is myself, Bobby Carmichael, who serves as secretary, among other things, he serves as secretary to the Troup County Development Authority. E. Caraway representing the state of Georgia, David Lyons representing the West Point Development Authority, Mayor Drew Ferguson. We started getting together once a week. And the purpose of the first part of our meeting was to better understand and get ourselves educated about the Kia business model. Secondly, we got into conversations about the future. And at that point in time, their sales were continuing to do this, Hyundai sales in Montgomery continued to do this, and they were basically out of capacity in both locations. What Kia wanted, and hopefully what Kia got yesterday in this transaction, was they wanted flexibility. And the flexibility came in the following forms. They wanted to have an investment tool that was bonded with certain inducements so that if their business continues the way it is now, that they can make those investments with bonded money when and where they so choose. That could either be in their existing plant through the utilization of new technologies. It could be investments in their suppliers that we currently know that are here, and other suppliers which we are confident are going to be coming to this region at some point in the hopefully foreseeable future if Kia's business remains as strong as it is. That's what they want. And so we spent a lot of time on trying to understand exactly how that would work. And in the MOU, there's some specific language that gives them the right to make certain investments. There is a cap on the amount of investment that they can make in a supplier, and that cap is at 50%, with the exception of tooling. And let's talk about tooling for just a second. In a typical Kia vehicle, there are 3,000 parts in a car. And those parts have to come together in a certain order to produce 360,000 units of product per year. So as we all know, the logistics of what they do is quite remarkable. These parts are coming from American suppliers that we know that are located close to Kia. They're coming from other American suppliers which are not located in our proximity but in our country. And then a lot of these parts are still coming from South Korea. And for the ones of you who go to the airport, you've noticed that we've had a substantial uptick in freight through our airport as a result of having to air freight products in from Korea to meet Kia's growing demand. So it's quite a complex business model that they employ. A couple of days ago, Kia announced that their internal strategy relative to models was over the next 4 years, they wanted to produce and get onto the market 55 new models of vehicles. And that is an extraordinary feat if that can be accomplished. Because when every model change, many of those thousands of widgets have to be changed, have to be modified. They're totally different parts, which means that not only does Kia have to retool itself for the new model, but all of its suppliers have to retool themselves. And this is not only the molds and dies by which parts are made, but in new models, your welding points are in different places, so your whole robotic system has to be completely reprogrammed. So it's a massive undertaking to add a model. They wanted the flexibility to make those model changes quickly. So at the heart of this program from Kia's perspective is they now have in place 2 bonds. There's a bond that was approved yesterday through the West Point Development Authority that will be bonded at $1 billion. There was a bond approved yesterday through the Troup County Development Authority of $600 million. So Kia now has bonded capital throughout the county of West Point, and including the Harris, Troup County, West Point Industrial Park in West Point. Now, the way to think about this $1.6 billion, again, comparing it to the original deal, in the original deal, Kia made a commitment, we will invest $1.1 billion. In this arrangement, it is much more like a line of credit. Kia is saying that if our market conditions continue to be positive and we make internal business decisions, it is our intent over the 16-year period to invest an incremental $1.6 billion. But Kia is under no obligation to do so. If the market tanks, if we have a recession in this country, if they lose market share, or all the things that can happen in business don't line up properly for them, then this money will not be invested, or a portion of this will be invested. But we feel confident, and so does Kia, that in the next several years, if their market demand stays as strong as it is now, that a significant amount of this money will be invested. In fact, a lot of this money is being invested as we speak in the year 2012. When we say it is a $1.6 billion bond, please, when you report that, make sure it's reported that this is the maximum that Kia has been bonded to invest, but there is no obligation on their part to do so. So that's the Kia side. The other side has to do with what the community needs were that were expressed through these negotiations. And I'll start with the City of West Point. The City of West Point makes a very plausible argument that the size of Kia, the demand of Kia in a community the size of West Point can be daunting, and it can be overbearing. And the City of West Point basically said that we need some relief in terms of funding so that the normal average citizens of the City of West Point do not have to be burdened through their taxes to pay for a lot of public services requirements that are here specifically because Kia is here. And so out of those conversations, Kia made a contribution to the city of West Point for $6 million that will be paid over the 16-year period. There is a schedule in the MOU that shows that money. It's not prorated equally. It's front-end loaded to the first 5 years, and it kind of tails off toward the end. The City Council of West Point and the Mayor of West Point will have total responsibility for how and when and where that money is invested within the City of West Point.